I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. And today, we're talking about why so-called boring basic patterns might actually be the smartest thing you sew this summer. So we're going to cover why simple patterns are a strategy and not a shortcut, how to make basic sewing feel genuinely exciting, and 7 tips you can use to build a summer wardrobe you'll actually want to live in. All right, Haley, here's our icebreaker for today. Tell me about a time you made something really simple and ended up loving it way more than you expected.
A few years back, I made a black linen shift dress that I knew I would like it because it's a style that I've worn for years and a color that's very easy to wear. But I wear it so much in the summertime. It's like that perfect body skimming fit where you don't there's not too much fabric to maneuver around. It goes with everything. It's perfect for traveling. I feel like I need a white version.
Yeah.
Contemplating that for my summer sewing.
That would be nice. Black linen and white linen are just they're so versatile in the summer.
So cute with a little silk scarf and sandals. I'm talking myself into it as we speak.
Yeah. Easy breezy.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. What about you?
I think the thing that comes to mind for me is, if you follow us on YouTube, if you follow our YouTube channel, you've seen this a whole bunch, but I've made a ton of Alice tees, which is our long sleeve crew neck t-shirt. It's a fitted crew neck t-shirt. And I have made it now 5 times. So I just made my 5th one. And I wear it 9 months out of the year. This is what I have on my body. So it's just such a great layering piece. I wear it under things. I wear it just as a top. I wear it under my sweaters, under dresses, everything. The last one I made is a merino wool version. And it's a great base layer. It's great. It's wonderful. It's comfortable and super versatile. So I absolutely love it. And I have it in so many different colors now. So that's my answer. So give us your icebreaker for a future episode. So if you have a question for us, you can leave it in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave it in a comment on Spotify, and we'll answer it in a future episode. So that brings us into our topic for today. We're going to be talking about basics. So I want to talk about something that I think a lot of us feel, but we don't always even consider or say out loud. And that's this voice in the back of our heads that says you should be sewing something maybe a little bit more impressive. So you see someone on Instagram sewing, a fully tailored blazer or a coat with a welt pocket and bound buttonholes. And then you look at the simple t-shirt that you just cut out and you feel like maybe you're not doing enough. And I've definitely felt this at times. There have been times where I felt kind of almost embarrassed telling people what I was working on because it just felt so boring and simple. But here's what I've realized over the years. The pieces that I reach for the most, the garments that I wear until they're absolutely falling apart, they are almost always just the basics. So a great fitting tee or a simple pair of shorts or a tank top and a beautiful fabric. And honestly, in summer especially, that's really what makes sense. When it's hot, you want things that are light, that are easy to throw on, and are really comfortable. You don't want to be fussing with a wool blazer in July. So today, Haley and I want to make the case for embracing the basics this summer. We're going to share some ways to make the whole process feel creative and exciting and not just like you're phoning it in. And by the way, I have a YouTube video coming out this week with even more ideas for summer sewing, so be sure to subscribe to our channel at Seamwork Video if you want to catch that as well. So Haley, do you ever catch yourself feeling like a project is just too simple to be worth your time?
Yeah, I think I especially feel that in the spring and summer months. In the fall and winter, I feel like I can justify it because just with layering, there feels like there's so much more possibility for even the simple garments.
Yeah.
But in the summertime, my outfits tend to be 1 or 2 pieces max. So it feels harder to justify
for
me during the warmer season. So I definitely struggle with it more this time of year. What about you?
Yeah, I think sometimes for me, it's not even about it being too simple. Well, sometimes it is. Like, I kind of feel like there's a few things going on. There's like the idea that, well, I could just buy this thing, like a t-shirt or something. I don't have to make it myself. And then there's, is it really interesting to me? You know, is it something that I really feel excited about making? So those are some of the things that sometimes stop me from making basics, but at the same time, I do find that those are the things I tend to wear the most. And when I wear things a lot, then I will, you know, that in itself kind of makes me more excited about it. So it's kind of a push and pull.
Yeah, it feels kind of paradoxical at times.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think that pressure to sew more complicated things comes from?
I think for different people, it can be different reasons. I think for me personally, like for one thing, I like to push myself a little bit and try new things. And so sometimes it can feel just boring to make something that's really simple. It's just not as interesting, or I don't feel like I'm pushing myself, I guess.
Yeah. For me, I don't know if it feels like pressure to sew more complicated things. It's more that's what's more sounds more exciting to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's more about, you know, is it interesting to me? Is it feel kind of boring?
Yeah. I go through phases of when I feel that way and when I don't feel as much that way.
Yeah.
What's a basic garment in your wardrobe right now that you get the most wear of? I feel like I know the answer.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned the Alice tees. I do get a ton of wear out of those. I just wear those all the time. Another one, so I don't know if this would be considered a basic, but I did make the Orla mini skirt recently out of a sweater knit. So I tried making it out of a knit instead of a woven, and I really, really love that skirt. I wear that a lot, and I'm planning to make that again in denim, which I do think is kind of a basic, just a basic denim mini skirt. I have some Orlando t-shirts, which I also wear kind of a lot. It's another fitted t-shirt. I think knits generally just get a lot of wear for me. Those are the basics that I tend to wear a lot.
Yeah, I'm the same. I also have a bunch of Morgan tees cut out, which is our release that just came out this month in May. And I feel like those are going to be added to the rotation of heavily worn knitwear things.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm excited to make that soon too.
Do you think that there's a difference between simple and boring?
I do. Yeah. I think simple things can be interesting to make. I think when you're making something that's really simple, you kind of have to focus a little bit more on the details to make it interesting. I think then it's all about the fabric, the finishing, the techniques you use, and you can really focus in on those things instead of letting the pattern or the fabric do the talking.
Yeah. I think that it's almost like a constraint that makes things more interesting sometimes to like really think about how we can have these like really small scale design moments on more basic garments.
Yeah, I like to really focus on the quality, which we'll get into a little bit more, but I think that's what makes it really interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's get into some of these tips. So the first one is to redefine what basic actually means. So when we say basic, people sometimes hear boring or maybe even not good enough, but basic actually just means that it's foundational. So think about architecture. The most beautiful buildings in the world are built on really solid foundation. No one looks at the foundation and says, that's boring. It's just simply what everything else is built on. The most stylish wardrobes are usually anchored in really well-made, simple pieces. And that's true whether you're looking at a fashion designer's collection or your friend who just like always looks really effortlessly cool and put together. So instead of thinking of basics as the opposite of impressive, think of it as the thing that makes everything else in your wardrobe just work. So when you look at it this way, sewing a great basic is actually one of like the highest value things that you can make. So Sari, how do you think about the role of basics in your wardrobe?
I really do see them as kind of foundational, um, especially because I like to layer things quite a bit. So I feel like basics, especially the knitwear we were talking about earlier, does kind of form that. It's like a layer you can always rely on. It's like what you start with, the starting point for a lot of outfits for me. Something that I know is going to work, that I enjoy wearing, and that is going to go with a lot of different things.
Yeah. And it's like a supporting character in your wardrobe and an outfit. I also think about when we look at like art and the way our eye moves through, like, say, like a painting. There is by design supposed to be places where your eye kind of doesn't catch as much. And then there's places where your focus is supposed to be pulled. And that creates something that's like harmonious and pleasing. It makes you feel something. And your clothing is the same way.
Yeah, it draws attention away from certain areas and towards other things. And without that kind of negative space, then your eye doesn't know where to go.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The next tip is to let the fabric do the heavy lifting. So here's one thing that I've learned. A simple pattern is actually the best way to showcase a really incredible fabric. So if you have a really gorgeous hand-dyed linen or a bold print or a really beautiful drapey silk, you don't want to chop that up with dozens of seam lines and all these complicated details. You want to let the fabric speak. So think of it like framing a piece of art. You don't put an ornate gold frame on a really bold painting. You use a simple frame and let the art be the star. So this is actually your permission slip to go buy that fabric you've been eyeing. And a simple pattern is going to use less yardage. It takes less time. And it makes that splurge fabric worth every penny because you'll actually wear it. And some of my favorite things that I've ever sewn were incredibly simple patterns in fabrics that just made me happy every time I put them on. I was just thinking about this because before we started recording, we were talking about some fabrics that we were looking at Blackbird. And there's one that looks very similar to one I have, which is a linen that has a bunch of big roses on it. And I was thinking about what I should sew with that. And it's challenging because I want to find a pattern that's very, very simple so that the large scale print can really do the talking without being all broken up like I was just talking about. So when you have a really gorgeous fabric like that, pairing it with something simple works really, really well. Do you have any basics or any fabrics in your stash right now that would be perfect for that kind of approach, Haley?
Yeah, I have like a gingham that's in like a really unusual green colorway that I've been really wanting to make a pair of pull-on pants out of, just because not that the fabric is like crazy or anything like that, but it's a little different, and I really like it, and I want it to be the star of the show. So I just want like a simple pull-on style pant or maybe skirt that I can pair it with. And that's actually like a kind of a vacant spot in my design plans because I know I want something simple, but I just haven't quite put my thumb on what yet.
Yeah. I think it's a really good tip, though, just thinking about pairing those simple patterns with the more bold fabrics that you can't really find a great use for otherwise.
Yeah, totally. I went through a stage where I was obsessed with sewing floral dresses, which is like a old school Colette pattern of ours. And it was perfect for sewing like all sorts of fun, different fabrics. All right, our next tip is to use basics as your fit laboratory. This is one of the most practical reasons to sew basics, especially if you're still figuring out your fit. When you sew a complex pattern with lots of seams, lots of shaping, and just like lots of pieces in general, there's so many variables. And if something doesn't fit right, it can be really hard to figure out where it all went wrong. But with a more basic pattern, say like a simple tee or a pair of elastic waist shorts, you have fewer seam lines, fewer pieces, and fewer places where things can go off track. And that means that when you do make fit adjustments, you can really see the result and learn so much faster. And here's the thing, once you nail the fit on a simple tee, you can carry that knowledge into every top that you sew. You've built like a foundation that you can use again and again, and like a knowledge of your body. I think of it kind of like learning how to cook. You don't start with like a 5-course French dinner. You learn how to make a really good like roast chicken first, and then you build out from there. These things like teach us the techniques that we can bring into our future projects. Sarai, have you ever made a basic pattern, or has a basic pattern ever taught you something about fit that you then got to use in more complex projects?
That's a really good question. I think so. I think, I was thinking about like when you're trying to fit something that has a simple shape that has like, for example, like a dress with bust darts, it doesn't have like complicated seaming or anything like that. That's where it's actually easiest to fit. And I feel like the dresses that I've made that are in that style are where I figured out how to do, for example, bust adjustments and things like that, that could then be used on, different styles. So I do feel like the simple patterns do afford you that place to practice. And they're also, like you said, they're faster and easier to sew. So that makes it a lot, less high stakes as well.
Yeah, I've found the same thing. And after a while of sewing, you do get a kind of a visual sense for like when I look at an armhole, I can be like, I think that's going to be too low on me.
Yeah.
Just like off the bat. And getting a lot of those simple projects underneath your belt is where you can start to build that like visual recognition of those types of patterns.
Yeah, it's like getting your reps in.
Yeah.
You got to get your reps in, and then you develop that eye. Well, the next tip is one that I use a lot, and that is to add one intentional detail. So if you want to make a basic pattern feel more special without turning it into a complex project, you can just add one thing to it. So pick a single detail that interests you. Maybe it's top stitching in a contrasting thread color, or maybe it's a fun bias binding on the neckline, or maybe it's like a little patch pocket in a different fabric. I do this constantly. Whenever I make the same thing over and over, I usually just change up one little detail, and that just makes it more interesting to me and more fun. And what I love about this approach is that it gives you a chance to practice new techniques in a really low stakes way. So if you've always wanted to try, for example, flat felled seams, a simple shirt is the perfect place to do that. And if you want to experiment with hand stitch hems, a basic tank that doesn't have that much to hem is going to be a lot easier to deal with. And you're learning as you sew, but you're not overwhelmed because the rest of the project is familiar and easy. So like last summer, I added a little lace trim to the hem of the simple tee that I was making. And it took maybe like an extra 10 minutes, but it completely changed how the garment felt. And it just went from a plain white t-shirt to something that I felt really good putting on and felt really special. Is there a small detail that you like to add to your basic patterns? Do you have like a go-to?
I will say that that trims, I think, are highly underutilized for adding special details. I am a really big fan of that. I love a little contrast moment. So I like to think about places where I can add a little intentional contrast. Sometimes that's like intentionally mismatched serger thread can be like a fun and easy way to add like a little just for you detail, or a contrasting pocket bag, or top stitching, or things like that. So contrast is always something that I kind of like keep my eye on as something that's a really easy way to add like something.
I like color blocking too, like very simple color blocking. The other day, Sienna was wearing this sweatshirt that she made. I think it was a Daughter Judy pattern. And like the cuffs were each a different fabric and the neckband was a different fabric.
I'm familiar with this one. It's very cute.
It's really cute. And she was just like playing with her fabric. And I think it looks so adorable. And I think little details like that they're so creative and kind of underutilized sometimes because we're so focused on doing what the pattern says instead of playing around.
Our next tip is to lean into speed. I like this one. I like being fast. This one I think is especially important in the summertime because summer is for living. It's for being outside and going on trips and spending time with the people that you love. And for me, at least, it's not necessarily spending every single weekend hunched over your sewing machine on like a month's long project. There's absolutely...
That's what winter's for.
Yeah, that is for winter time, okay? The winter behavior. There's absolutely nothing wrong with complex projects if that's what excites you. But if you're feeling burned out or behind on your sewing plans, a quick basic can really be exactly what you need. There's a real creative high that comes from cutting into fabric in the morning and then wearing the finished garment that afternoon. And I think that momentum is really powerful in your sewing practice. And when you finish something quickly, it frees you up to make more things instead of just like one more complicated project all summer long. Maybe you make 5 or 6 basics and end up with a whole summer wardrobe. I think we sometimes underestimate the value of a quick win, and it reminds you that sewing is fun and what you're capable of. I'm not saying that it's like always a more is more situation, but sometimes that gives you the motivation that you need. Sarai, do you sew differently in the summertime compared to other seasons?
I try to plan less for the summer. I just try to make sure that I'm not overestimating how much I can do because, like you said, there's a lot of other stuff to do in the summer that you can't do the rest of the year.
Yeah, I tend to go for like more simple, not necessarily all basics, but just like choosing simplicity whenever there's a choice to be made, I think. Which is the most simple option?
Yeah. What is the easiest thing to do? I think that's my kind of guiding mantra in the summer. Just make it easy on yourself. I think this summer, I'm definitely going to try and keep everything very simple and very easy. I think in the past, I've really, even when I've tried to keep things simple and easy, I always have less time than I think I'm going to have in the summer.
Yeah, that's relatable.
The next one is to try a simple pattern hack. I think one of the reasons that I think people dismiss basic patterns is that they feel like there's nothing to learn. And I've definitely felt that way sometimes too. But basic patterns are actually the easiest thing to modify. And modifying patterns is one of the most valuable skills you can build. So you could try, for example, cropping a top. You can do that on a simple tee where there's almost no risk. Maybe you want to experiment with adding a side slit. A basic, shift dress or something like that is the easiest place to try that. And because the pattern is simple, you can clearly see what your changes are doing. So there's less to go wrong. So here's some more ideas. You can change the neckline shape. You can crop the length. You could add a curved hem. You could swap the sleeves for a different style, or you could add a drawstring at the waist. They're all relatively small changes, but they turn a basic pattern into your pattern. And that's when it stops feeling boring and it starts feeling creative. So I think this is one of the most empowering things you could do as a sewist is start making design decisions, even small ones. And that's the leap from following instructions to actually designing. Do you have any pattern hacks you've been doing lately?
I am incapable of making something directly as it comes.
I feel that way too sometimes.
Or like, at the very least, I'm always like, I want to shorten the sleeve or I want to lengthen it or just like something.
Yeah.
Because that is my toxic trait. And also just simple things like I'm always like, oh, I want there to be a facing on the hem, and then it can be a contrast facing, or things like that. I feel like that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it is part of the fun.
No one's going to tell me what to do. Tell me how to sew something. This is like my inner teenager is alive and well. What about you? Any pattern hacks lately?
Well, I shorten things all the time because I like a short skirt. I like something long or something short. So I often shorten my skirts. Sometimes I shorten like sweater. I have a short waist as well, so I sometimes shorten sweaters or tops also, just to make things a little bit more cropped. Those are some of my go-tos. Often modify sleeves, make them a little longer, a little shorter, things like that. I always like to do, first of all, the things that I know that I enjoy wearing or the shapes that I enjoy wearing. That's the first one. But then also, it's just fun to play around and find a way to vary it, especially if it's something I've made before.
Yeah.
I think that's fun. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about adding one detail. So I'm usually either adding a detail to it or doing some kind of modification like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I also am always playing pattern Tetris and trying to fit all my pattern pieces. And I'm like, well, I guess it can be an inch shorter.
Yeah, exactly. That's another reason.
It won't hurt anything. And our last tip is to think in outfits and build a mini capsule. A single basic piece on its own may not feel exciting, but then when you start to think about how it fits into an outfit, that's when everything can change. And that boring white t-shirt becomes a completely different story when you're picturing it tucked into that bias cut skirt that you sewed last month, or thrown over a dress as a layering piece, or even paired with the linen shorts that you're planning on making. One exercise that I love is to pull out a few pieces from my closet, things that I've already made or bought, and then think about what's missing. What basic pieces would tie the 3 or 4 of those pieces together in an outfit? That can be your next project. And now that just a boring basic piece is a piece that actually makes your whole wardrobe work a little bit harder.
I love that idea. That's a really cool exercise.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that this is really great to do with pulling out a couple things from your closet that you love to wear that you don't wear, or you want to wear, but you don't wear. Brainstorming some ideas on what would make it more wearable for you. And then if you want to take this even further, you can plan a mini summer capsule of maybe 3 or 5 basics that all work together. A tee, a pair of shorts, a simple skirt, a tank, all in colors and fabrics that coordinate really nicely together. And now you've got a whole collection of outfits from a handful of simple, quick projects. And that's not boring. It's strategic, in my opinion, anyway. Sari, have you ever planned a group of basics like that?
Well, not really, but now I'm thinking, wouldn't it be fun to make a little collection of maybe 3 or 4 basics all in the same fabric? Wouldn't that be really cool? Pink. Well, I was talking about making pink linen shorts before.
Thinking of your pink linen shorts.
And then I was thinking about making a matching top. What if it was 3 pieces or 4 pieces that were all in the same fabric? Maybe that would be maybe it'd be a little bit overkill for my closet, but
repetitive. Yeah, I can see that.
But it would be kind of fun too to have that kind of mix and match little mini wardrobe.
I feel like that would be a really good summer design your wardrobe theme for someone. Is just a 4-piece capsule of basics.
Yeah, that would be really cool. All right, well, we've gone through some great tips today, so I'm going to recap the 7 tips that we shared. One was to redefine what basic means as foundational, not boring. Number 2 is to let the fabric do the heavy lifting. Number 3 is to use basics as your fit laboratory. Number 4 is to add one intentional detail to your basics. Number 5 is to lean into the speed. Number 6 is to try a simple pattern hack. And number 7 is to think in outfits and build a mini capsule. All right, well, let's talk about our takeaways. I think my big takeaway from this is that this really comes back to the idea that sewing is, again, all about decisions. And when you sew a basic pattern, you're really not making fewer decisions, you're just making different decisions. You're deciding what fabric to use and how to style it and what details to add and how it fits into your wardrobe. And like we talked about, those are all design decisions, and really they're just as creative as choosing a complex pattern to begin with. Maybe even more so because there's nothing really else to hide behind. They're kind of all the decisions are your own. So I think just basics are a really good opportunity to play. And I think play is a vital part of sewing and creativity. What about you, Haley?
I think that sometimes when we think about basics or we sew basics, we don't put as much design intention into them as we do with other things that we sew. And when we take the time to design them intentionally and think about all of those details, then we end up with something, A, that we like more, and B, that is not like a bore to sew.
Yeah.
And so I think I would challenge you to slow down and be just as intentional with that white denim skirt or t-shirt as you are with that dress you're really excited to make for the summer.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart way of looking at it. Well, we've been talking a lot about basics all this episode, and if you are feeling inspired to sew something simple and satisfying this summer, I have a really good place for you to start. We're offering our Hansi pattern completely free right now, and Hansi is a woven tee with cut-on sleeves. It's a total wardrobe staple, and it's honestly one of the best blank canvas patterns that we have. I made one not too long ago, and I absolutely love it. I just think it's the perfect little woven t-shirt for my closet. It's really great for showing off a beautiful fabric, which is exactly what we're talking about today. I really want to make one in a Liberty Tonalon. I think that would be very, very pretty.
So pretty.
It's an easy make, so whether you're a beginner or you just want something you can cut and sew in an afternoon, it's a really great fit. And because it's so simple, it's the ideal pattern for trying out those small details and pattern hacks that we talked about. You can grab Hansi for free right now, so we'll put a link in the show notes for you to get that. Or if you go to seamwork.com, you can find it on our website. Just click on PDF patterns and look for Hansi there. If you liked this episode, consider leaving us a review. We would love to hear from you either on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. You can leave a comment there and we read all of those. They really help other people to find the show, so we really appreciate if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And you can follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. That's it for us this week. I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.